Okay.
So let me share my screen. You guys should be able to see my screen now. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good.
How do I make it bigger?
How do you make my screen bigger on yours? I don't know. There should be a window.
Oh, well, it's okay. I can see it.
Okay.
That's all that matters.
Okay. So, anybody have any questions about last week's assignments before we move to this week's?
I don't have any question. I'm good.
No.
Okay. Okay.
No, I got through that one.
Okay.
But I'm stuck where I'm now, where I emailed you.
And we'll go through that one. That one gets a lot of people stuck. So we'll do a couple of the ones in the beginning, and then we'll do that one at the end so that you can kind of get an idea of the differences and else and else if. So,
well, I'm stuck on the and.
Ah, okay. My apologies. Several people sent me questions.
Mm-hmm.
So.
No worries.
But we'll go through them, and if I don't answer your question, let me know, and we'll answer it, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. This week's lesson, this week's module, is about how do you ask a computer a question. All of what I do on a daily basis as a programmer is about making decisions. It's really about how to communicate a series of decisions and how to make them to a computer. Printing out numbers and strings and things like that is great, but until you can ask a question and know what to do when you get an answer, you can't control a computer. So beginning with this module, we are really talking about how do you control a computer. You control a computer by asking it questions and telling it what to do when it gets an answer. And that's what we're going to do in this module. So the way we ask a question to a computer in Python is by using the keywords if, elif, and else. Okay? Those are the three keywords that are the most important. And then we'll add operators. Operators like and or. Now, that's all important. But the basic concept is a computer can't distinguish between a lot of things. A computer can distinguish based on something like true and false. And when we ask a question using Python, we will always be expecting an answer that is either true or false. If it's true, then what's in the code block underneath the if statement will happen. If it's not true, then it's going to move on. So those are the basic fundamental things. We're asking a question. The answer to that question will always have to be true or false. Those are the only two you get. And we're going to talk a little bit about code blocks and operators. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. And this is just your experimental code section, which you get. So here is how they're explaining conditionals, a conditional statement. What we have on the left-hand side of my screen is the float, and we're going to give it an initial value. We're going to give the float an initial value, and then we're going to ask a question. When you see this diamond-like shaped thing in a float, it is a decision point, which means you're going to ask the computer a question, and the computer is going to decide if it's true or if it's false and act accordingly. And you'll see coming out of this float, of the decision point in the float, there's true, and there's false. True is on the left side, false is on the right side. Doesn't matter which side it's on, it's just true or false. If it's true, we're going to print big. If it's false, we're going to print small. So now let's run this float and see what happens. Okay? First thing is we get some input. Now this is important because when you do your Python in Codio, you're going to be expecting input. So in our case, the input is 20, and we'll change that input in a minute and see what happens. So right here we're asking the question, is our variable, the value in our variable named input greater than 100? Well, let me ask you, is 20 greater than 100?
No.
Okay, so is this decision point going to evaluate to true or false?
Wouldn't it be false?
It will exactly be false. So we'll come down and our output will be small. So we get here to small, and then it prints out small to the screen, and we're done. So now
Okay.
if I go into the float, go ahead.
On the float, I didn't know you could do that with that.
Yes. You can also
the
do this.
steps.
Yep.
Okay.
So you can also do this. I just changed this value to 101.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I'm going to now step through my float, and this is this little arrow right here, this one that says step, allows you to step through the float. Okay? So what's happening in this first section is I have a variable named input 0, and I'm assigning it the value of 101. Then I come to my decision point. My decision point is input of 0 greater than 100. So what's the value that's stored in the variable input 0?
101.
That's right. So is 101 greater than 100?
Yes. True.
So does the expression evaluate to true or does it evaluate to false?
True.
Exactly.
So print big.
That's exactly right. There you go. So that's the conditional statement. So we can change this back to 20 just so that it's there. So this is how you run a float, and that's what you can do when you're starting to read through this. Go through the floats and change these values. Wherever you see a little gray box, you can change a value. And then you can see what happens based on the value that you change.
Yeah, I've been skipping the float charts because A, they made no sense to me. It's easier to read the code. And B, I didn't know you could step through it like that. So I'll be doing that from now on.
The stepping through it is, I think, what the really helpful part is.
Yeah.
So if we're over here now, we're on the left-hand pane, and this is the Python code equivalent to the float. So line number 9, well, first of all, we have our import sys. It's always there. Don't worry about it. Line number 9 has argument 1, so it's a variable, and the name of the variable is argument 1, and we're going to be getting input from Codio. That's what the sys.argv of 1 is. And so argument 1 is going to have some input that Codio has given us. And if we think back to our float, that value will be 20. Number is just another variable. We're going to call it number. And what we're doing here on line 10 is we're taking the value in the variable, argument 1, and we're turning it into an integer. Because when Python reads anything in from the command line, it assumes it's a string. So if we want to evaluate it as an integer, And the only way you can, you can't, one string is not greater than another string. An integer is going to be greater than an integer. Okay, just
right.
like when you do math.
Like apples and oranges, you can't compare the two. It's either apples and apples or oranges and oranges. You can't.
And that's right.
Strings and integers.
And in this case, you can't do arithmetic expressions against a string. It has to be an integer or a float value. So I have to change what Codio gives me into an integer, and I'm storing that in the variable number. And then down here is the questions I'm asking. Okay? So if it's a keyword, every set of questions you ask in Python will always begin with an if. Every conditional will begin with an if. So if you are working on conditionals, if you are thinking about asking Python a question, you will always start with the keyword if. This is an indication to Python that you're about to ask a question. The question that I'm asking is what follows. This question says, is the value in the variable number greater than 100? That's what this is. So I can actually, I'm going to say is. Okay? So that's the question I'm asking. Is the value contained in number greater than 100? And if it is, then I'm going to print big. So let's look at a few other things here before we move on to the else statement. This colon. Colon is very important. This colon will probably drive you crazy.
Doesn't it designate the end of the if statement?
It makes the end of the if statement, and it is one of the biggest things that new coders forget. They forget to put that colon, and they don't know why their code won't work, and they're getting all kinds of either weird output, but just weird things are happening.
Or
remember the colon. Or syntax errors, or all kinds of stuff. Remember the colon. Colon is your friend. And that's not, you will be amazed at the amount of people that I see that get frustrated because they can't get their code to work because they forgot something simple like a colon.
Or something as simple as an extra space.
Yes, exactly.
I did that.
Yeah. If it begins with an if, that line of code has to end with a colon. If it begins with an else, that line of code has to end with a colon. Okay? So colons, you got to remember them. The next thing is if we look at line 16, which is directly under the if statement, we will see that the word print is not left justified. All right? It's not all the way over to the left. Python is a language that is space delimited. What I mean by that is that if everything, like if you've got left justification like you got in Microsoft Word, everything is off to the left-hand side. That's fine, but Python won't recognize this print statement as something you want to do after the if it's not indented.
It has to be nestled under it, right?
That's right. And if it's not, then you're going to get a syntax error. And when we go to the first challenge, I'll show you what those syntax errors look like. Okay? So that's the other important thing. You've got to be indented properly. Okay? Not just a single indent. Sometimes it's a single indent, sometimes it's a double indent, but you got to make sure everything that you want to happen under that if statement is indented identically.
And the way
Now the
to
nice
do
thing
that,
about
it's set in the book
Codio will,
tab.
it's a tab, but Codio will try and do that for you. And I'll show you that when we go to the challenges that Codio is already set up to automatically try and indent for you if it thinks you need to indent. But tabbing is the way to do it. You're exactly right. So what's happening in lines 15 through 18? We've already discussed it. 15 is I'm asking the question. Is the value contained in number greater than 100? Well, if that evaluates to true, then what's going to happen is I'm going to come into this statement here. Now, even though this is a single line, line 16 is what's called a code block. Okay? It is a series of lines of code that are supposed to happen together based on a condition. So this is the condition. Whoops, sorry. Line 15 is the condition. Line 16 is the block under the condition. So when you hear people talking about code blocks, that's pretty much what they're talking about. Now we're going to expand this definition a bit next week, and we're going to expand it the following week. But for this week, this is what a code block is. It's anything under an if statement that's indented. Additionally, it's anything under an else statement that's indented. So line 17 is the else. So I have if and I have else. If is I'm asking this question. Okay, that's great. But what if my question doesn't evaluate to what I think it should evaluate to? So in this case, it's if number is greater than 100, which means it will if it evaluates to true, I want to print big. In this case, if the if statement has evaluated to false, I'm going to automatically come to the else. And the else says, okay, if all else fails, if everything's evaluated to false, I'm going to print small. So there's a code block under the else that happens to be a single line, and it prints small. Does this pretty much make sense?
So far.
Okay. So we know it's going to print big because of whatever Codio gave us. Okay? So, and this just goes through and reminds you of the float and things like that. And this is just an explanation that I gave you of the print statement. So indentation and tabs, this is just what we talked about. Again, if you look at this, this is wrong. Why is this wrong? Because print and these two print statements are not indented. Okay? This is describing a code block. What we see is if here, this is where we're asking the question, and then all of this code under here is indented. So this block happens to be 1, 2, 3, 4 lines long. And we'll go into that a little bit more. Okay, so now we're going to get into operators or equivalents. Okay, there's two things. There's assignment and there's equivalence. And they can be a little confusing because an assignment is a single equal sign. Equivalence is a double equal sign. Assignment says, take this value and put it into this variable with a name. Equivalence asks the question, are these two things the same? So people get confused all the time, but a double equal is not the same as a single equal. So here we have our float on the left-hand side of the screen again. And we're going to walk through our float. We got 20. Here we're going to evaluate is input equal to 100. So the problem with this particular float is that this diamond, because it's a float, only has a single equal, but it really should have a double equal. This float irritates me. Now, our input, it does. Our input is 20, and so this diamond is really asking a question. The question that it's asking is the value in the variable input the same as 100? 20 is not the same as 100, so it's going to be false, and I'm going to print out is not 100. So what we have here is we have a double equal sign. Double equal is equivalence, and it is comparing two things. You will never see a double equal sign when you are assigning a value to a variable. You will only ever see the double equal sign in an if statement, or an else if statement, or excuse me, an else if statement. So just remember that. If you're asking a question, it's the double equal sign. Okay?
Okay.
So let's go through this challenge really quick. So Codio's given us some number n, and we're going to say if n is equal to 100, output hit, otherwise output miss. So how many questions am I asking?
1.
Correct. The answer is 1. So what keywords will I need to use?
If and else.
Correct. Okay. What operator will I need to use?
Double equals.
That's correct. Very good. Very, very good. So now let's ask some questions. All right. It says if n is equal to 100, output hit. So let's start with that. So I know I'm going to use my keyword if, and I have a variable in line 4n that Codio has nicely given me and turned into an integer because of the use of the int function.
Right.
So I'm going to say if n, now
Which
I'm going
has capitalized, I learned.
Yes, it does.
Because it's capitalized in the argument or the string.
That's right. Python is case sensitive.
Yeah.
And that can drive people crazy.
Oh my gosh. You have no idea. I kept running it, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? Oh yeah, durr.
So, tell me right now what's wrong with line 11. There are two things wrong with line 11 as written. If I'm going to ask Python a question.
Well, there needs to be a double equal sign, and of course, the colon is our friend.
Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. So now, what do I do if line 11 evaluates to true?
Print hit.
Correct. Now you'll notice when I hit the enter key, and I'll do this again, when I hit the enter key, my cursor is already indented. And it's indented because Codio said, oh, you put a colon there, so I'm going to indent it for you. Okay?
Yeah, it's nice.
Yes. So now we have the second part of this, which is otherwise output miss. So
otherwise is just another word for else.
Correct. So this is where you have to remember to backspace in Codio. Okay? So is line 13 complete?
No.
What am I missing?
Colon.
Thank you. And then what do I do if line 11 evaluates the false? It's going to come down here to the else, and I want to print missed, right?
Yes. With
Okay,
the
so let's,
quote marks, or the,
that's,
not quote marks, the apostrophe marks.
yeah, they're single quotes.
Single quotes. Thank you.
Single quotes. That's okay. So that's challenge 2.5, and it's exactly what we want to, and it's very much like the flows. Okay, except we're using equivalents. Sorry?
That one was easy.
Okay. So we're going to leave the not equals. Not equals is just the opposite of equals. So not equal says that something is not the same. Right? That's all it means, and it's an exclamation point, so it's just the opposite of equivalent. Okay? So I'm going to leave this one for you guys to do, because it's very close to what we did in 2.5. And we'll go on to else if and some of the other conditionals, okay?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to go through a couple of the harder ones tonight. So here's the flowed for, they talk about two conditionals. So here, when we see these two diamonds, we're actually asking two separate sets of questions. Okay? So I'm going to walk through the flowed, and it's just input is 111. That's just what we're being given. Here I'm asking a question. The question is the value contained in the variable input 0 less than or equal to 100? Well, let's ask that question. Since we know that input 0 has a value of 111, is it less than or equal to 100?
No.
So it evaluates to true or false?
False.
Okay. So now we're going to go down, and we're hitting the second question. The second question says, is the value contained in the variable named input 0 greater than 200? Is it?
No.
Okay. So it's going to evaluate to false, and so we're going to fall all the way through and print out big. So how did we ask that second question? How you ask that second and all subsequent questions in Python is elif, okay? Elif is another keyword, and that is simply asking another question. So the first question will have had to have evaluated to false, so it will then come to the next question. And so this, whoops, sorry about that. So these are basically first question. The second question will only ever get hit if the first question evaluates to false. The third question will only ever get hit if the second question evaluates to false. So this is definitely, it's a stepwise thing. If at any point in time, if you're running your program and the first if just not going to do it. It's going to do what's in here and be done with it.
Okay, you cut out for a second.
Okay. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So the important thing to remember about conditionals when you start to ask these multiple questions is that if at any point in time a question evaluates to true, none of the other questions will even be asked, okay? So if my if statement evaluates to true, it will never, ever hit any of these other lines of code. Python will simply skip them.
Right.
Okay? So I just want that to be clear because people are unclear about that when they start first writing conditionals.
Okay.
All right. So here, it's just asking us to fix some errors. So we're going to go through this one, fix the errors, and then see what happens. Okay? First of all, let's just read over the code quickly and see if there's anything we can figure out. Well, we know import sys is always import sys. And we know that Python's just given us a string here. So let's go down to line 6. Can anybody see any problem in line 6?
Shouldn't there be a double equals?
That's right. Because here, this equal is saying I want to put the value THERE into the variable string. But I can't do that in a conditional statement. The only thing a conditional statement can do, the only thing an if statement can do is ask a question. So it has to be the double equal. Does everything else on line 6 look good?
With a string, you do use the single quotes.
Or
Right?
double. It doesn't matter. They're
Double.
interchangeable in Python. Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure of that.
Okay.
Line
So now what about,
good?
okay, what about line 8?
No. You need the best friend. Colon.
Your colon is your best friend. So let's check it and see how we did. I think we did pretty good. Okay?
Okay.
So everybody good with that one? I'm going to leave you guys to fix the errors in 210. And I'm going to lead you guys to do, if you probably with a number input will be 1 or 0 number, then I'll put on or off. So I'm going to leave you guys to do this. Sorry?
That one was a little challenging.
Okay.
Because I think what I had to do was change the integer into a string.
You shouldn't have to. Okay? So
Okay.
do you want to go through this one real quick?
Yeah, because I can't remember how I went through that one.
Okay. So what they're saying is you're provided with a number input which will be either 1 or 0. If the number is 1, output on. If the number is 0, output off. So how many questions do we have to ask?
2.
Correct. So if we're asking 2 questions, what keywords?
If and elif.
That's correct. So let's start off with the if statement. If what? Am I doing equivalence here? Am I doing less than or equal to? What am I doing? If you're reading your problem statement and you see the word is, you can be assured it's equivalence.
Yeah, double equals. If
Okay.
capital N equals 1 colon enter print with an on, and then next line backspace elif colon n equals 0 colon print off.
Let's see what happens. Okay, looks good.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's right, because
this
you're
is
asking
about
2 questions.
That's right. Now, it's not an if-else. This is an if-elif. Okay?
Right.
And we're doing it that way because it specifically said if the number is 0, output 1, if the number is 1, output on. If the number is 0, output off. So they could have passed us in 77, and then they wouldn't have wanted us to do anything. Okay?
Okay. And integers, they don't require the single quotes or quotations.
That's right. If you have something in quotes, it is always a string in Python. A string. Okay? Python will always assume a string unless it knows it's an integer or a float or something else. Now, we know that n is an integer because, that's right, because we told it that n was an integer. Or Python told us that n was an integer in line 4 by using the int function. Okay. So I'm going to leave this challenge for you guys to do because it's the other way around. It's the opposite of the previous challenge. Okay?
Right. It uses the exclamation mark and equal sign.
It uses the not equals. That's right.
The not equals, yeah.
That's right. So whereas the previous one was equivalent with the equal sign, this one you're going to be using the not equals. Okay?
Right.
All right. So now we're going to get into logical operators, which is going to get into more complex questions.
Yeah, this is where I'm
stuck. That's okay. We'll get you unstuck. So in this flowed, what you'll see is we have this assignment here. The variable named number is going to be set to -10. And then we're going to ask a question, and that question is going to say, is the value in number greater than or equal to 10, and is it less than or 100? Less than 100. Depending on what it evaluates to, we're going to do something, and then we're going to check with an OR, okay? So, and here's how this works. And says both must be true for the question to evaluate to true. Or says if one is true or the other is true, then we evaluate to true. So
okay, so if one or the other is true, then it outputs true?
Then it will evaluate to true. And says everything has to be true or it's false.
Okay.
Or says one of these can be true and it's true. It takes both of them to be false before I'll say it's false.
Okay.
Okay? So that's what we're looking at here. These are logical operators, and they are part of asking a question. So you can ask complex questions now. Okay? So here we're setting number to -10. So what's the first one going to evaluate to? Is number going to be greater than or equal to 10 and less than or equal, and less than 100? Well, let's break this down a bit, because there's two parts of this question.
Right.
Is number greater than or equal to 10?
No.
Okay. And now we see that we have this and here. So what we know about and is that both parts of the question have to evaluate to true. So we've already said that one part of this is false, correct?
Correct.
So what does this evaluate to?
False.
It'll always evaluate to false if one part of it evaluates to false. So it says not a positive 2-digit number. Okay?
Right, because of the negative.
Yes. Sorry about that. I don't know why that happens every time I touch these floats. Because I have a Mac. Okay, so now we're down here at the or. Now we're down here at the or. And or is a little bit different because only one piece of this puzzle has to evaluate to true for the whole thing to be true. So number is still minus 10. So it's going to say, so let's ask ourselves the question, is the value in number less than 0?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a negative number.
That's exactly right. So do we need to go any further in asking these questions?
No, because one part of it's true.
So it's going to evaluate to?
True. Invalid number.
Invalid number. Okay. So that shows us, that flowed, and my crazy mousemanship shows us how a compound set of questions work. So, and here we see it in Python form, okay? Line number 2 is number equal minus 10. Here, on line 4, we're asking a complex question. We know it's a complex question because it has either the and or the or. And they did this wrong.
Yeah, I was about to say, where's the or?
Yeah, they didn't do this right. This doesn't actually match the float. That's why. So this one's confusing. It should have matched the float. So this is, oh, they want you to experiment. So we would do the or here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we would get the same as we got before. Actually, it's not even right because it's not a 1-digit number.
Isn't it a 2-digit?
It's still a 2-digit number. Yeah, so it's not right. But let's just go through the code, and then we'll go into the challenges because this is just an example, and it doesn't count for your grade.
Yeah.
So here we're
asking.
asking.
I wasn't getting my thing right because the float was incorrect. The code.
The float.
Yeah.
This does not match the float.
Maybe that's where I was getting confused.
So on line number 4, we have a 2-part question. Okay. And we know it's a 2-part question because there's a single and. And so there are two expressions that have to evaluate. The first expression is number is greater than or equal to 10. So there's going to be 2 questions here. And the first is number greater than or equal to 10? And the second question is number less than or equal to 100?
Less than 100.
That's right. And says, take the output, take what each of those individually has evaluated true to, either true or false, and if they're both the same, then, or if they're both true, then the expression evaluates true. Otherwise, it evaluates the false. So if there's a single and, you're evaluating 2 expressions. If there's 2 ands, you're always going to be evaluating 3 expressions. That's just how it works. So here's everybody's favorite problem, the fast cars. Okay. So you're going to be given 2 inputs. All right? And they determine the speed of the car. So we have speed 1 and speed 2. Right? Codio's giving them to us, and it already says they're integers. It's giving to us as ints, so we don't have to worry about that. It says that either car is traveling more than 70 then output fast cars, otherwise output okay. So, how many questions am I asking?
2.
Really?
No.
How?
1.
That's correct. I'm going to have, what keywords am I using?
If and
If and else.
oh, just if and else?
It's when you see in a problem statement like this.
That's right. Otherwise,
if you see the word otherwise, it's else. Don't worry about asking any other questions. It's else. Okay?
Okay.
So, what operator am I using? I've got 2 choices. I've got and I've got or. So now let's read over this question because it's going to tell us. It says if either car is traveling at more than 70. Either says it can be one or the other. Exactly right. If it said both, we would be using and. All right? But
So
it says either.
If both cars are traveling at more than 70, then you would use the and, but it says either, so you use or, correct?
That's right. Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So now let's write an if statement. All right? So we're going to say if
speed 1.
Oh, it'd help me if I could type. Is traveling more than 70. So what's going to be our arithmetic expression here?
The more than symbol.
Greater than?
Greater than, yes. Thank you. Or speed 2 greater than 70, print fast cars, else, print, okay.
Let's see if I did this right. Okay.
Yes! I understand now.
Now it makes sense, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, it does.
So now we have fast cars 2. So this is going to be more complex. You see, we have 3 little bullet points here, okay? So while we're talking about this, and this will be probably the last one we do tonight, so it says they're provided with 2 inputs which determine the speed of 2 cars. Looks very similar, speed 1 and speed 2. Again, they're using the int function, so we know they're going to be integers. It says if both cars are traveling more than 70, then output 2 fast cars. If one car only is moving more than 70, output 1 fast car. Otherwise, output no fast cars. So if we look at, let's go back to our set of questions. So how many questions am I asking?
It looks like 2.
That's correct. Okay? So what are my keywords?
If and else.
Is that right?
And.
Well, and is an operator.
Because it says both.
Okay, it does, but we're not there yet. I'm asking, in terms of if, else, and else, what am I using?
If, else, and else.
Perfect. Okay?
Okay.
So, what operators am I going to use? Well, if we look at, you were right. If you look at the first one, it says both.
Equal, equal? Oh, okay, and. And is an operator?
And is an, yes.
And
Well, no,
or.
and's not really an operator. And, nah, no, they're operators. In every language, they're operators, sorry.
Okay.
So, that's fine. Sorry if I was confusing. So,
Awesome.
let's start off with our first question. So, I always start my first question off with an if. And
If
what am I checking for?
you're checking for both cars traveling at more than 70, then output 2 fast cars. So if speed 1 is greater than 70 and speed 2 greater than 70, colon, print 2 fast cars.
Okay,
If,
that's pretty good. Okay.
Speed 1 greater than 70 or speed 2 greater than 70, colon, print 1 fast car. Enter, else no fast cars. Print no fast cars.
Very good. Now, do you see what we did there?
Yes.
So, for the first question, it said both. So we used and. For the second question, it said only if one car only is moving. So this only is also an indication that it's an either or.
Either or. Okay.
Okay, so let's see if we got it right. Looks like we got it right.
Yay!
That make sense?
Yes.
So let's just talk through 3.4. Okay? You want to determine the school level. So this is if 6 to 11, then output primary school. So what you're going to have to do here is you're going to have to use less than and greater than signs. So here, if you provide it with a person's age, you need to determine which school level the person falls within. So 6 to 11, let's do the first one, okay? So Codio is giving us an integer age. So these are basically what we're checking for as boundaries here. So
we're going to use the keywords if, elif, or, and else.
okay. Let's see if we're going to use or.
Oh. Because it says neither. If
That's
neither,
at the
then
very
else.
end. And
Okay.
in this case, it can be considered an otherwise.
Okay, and else.
Okay. So let's just think about this for a second. So I want to know if age is between 60 and 11. If 6 to 11. So I believe that's inclusive. So if we're talking about checking if a number is inclusive, we always use a less than or equals or a greater than or equals. Okay? So if I want to know if age is between 6 and 11, I would say something like, is age greater than or equal to 6 and less than or equal to 11? Because both things have to be true for that child to be in primary school. Does that make sense?
So, sort of. If age is greater than or equal to, right? 6, and I'm writing this down to work it
Okay,
out.
well, it's being recorded. So this is a range, okay? So what we're dealing with here is a range. It can also be between, okay? What we want to do is we want to know if something falls within a boundary. And in this case, our boundary is starts at 6 and ends at 11. So how do I ask Python if something is within a boundary? There's no keyword boundary in Python. Okay, there's no key where there's a range function, but that's for looping.
Right.
There's no keyword between in Python. So what do? I construct a more complex question. So the question I'm constructing says, is age within the range, or actually, is age between 6 and 11 inclusive? That inclusive is important, okay? The inclusive means equal. Okay, so that's when you're going to get the less than or equal to or the greater than or equal to.
Okay. That makes sense.
So then we're going to break this down into its piece parts. We're first going to say, is age, well, if I am 7, in relation to 6, what am I? Am I greater than 6 or am I less than 6?
Greater than 6.
Okay, so if I am 6, is age greater than 6 or less than 6? Or the same as 6?
It's the
It's
same
equal
as
to 6. So I know that if I'm 7, it's greater than. And if I'm 6, it's equal to.
Oh, okay.
So let's apply the same logic to the other end of the range, to 11. We know that 10 is in between 6 and 11, right? So in relationship to 11, what is 10? Is 10 less than, equal to, or greater than?
I'm sorry, can you ask the question again?
Okay. In relationship to the number 11, if we have the number 10,
less than.
that's right.
Age
So,
is less than 11. Or equal to. Less than or equal to.
So given that logic, what I have in line 12 is just the Python equivalent. Okay? Is age greater than or equal to 6? And is age less than or equal to 11?
Both must be true in order for it to primary school.
That's right. So now I have to ask a second question. What keyword do I ask if I'm asking a second question?
Elif.
Okay. So,
LS age
applying the same logic, okay,
is greater than or equal to 12 and less than equal to 18, colon, our best friend.
Yes.
Then print, what does it say, secondary.
Okay. And what's the last part of it? What's the third bullet?
Else, colon, next line, print, NA.
Okay.
Capital NA.
Oh, wait a minute. What did I do wrong? Syntax error. Line 14. L if age greater than or equal to 12. What did I do wrong? L if age greater than or equal to 12. And, oh, that's what it was. Right there.
Age.
Age. Age does it every time.
Age. Yep. That's
Okay.
my bad.
No, it's my bad. I typed it. So does that make sense, doing a range?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yeah,
test that we did for that range, logically, before even we talked about Python code, we talked about what it was, what it meant to be a range.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm asking this because you're going to want to refer back to these types of thinking processes when you start on the milestone. Okay? Because on the milestone, you're going to be having to ask the computer questions and knowing what to do when I'm typing it in and giving it answers.
Excuse me.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. Are you good for tonight?
I am.
Okay. Everybody else good? Ready to continue on your own?
Actually,
Yep, I'm good.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
No. What'd you say?
This is Sean.
Hi,
Hello?
Sean. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
I know the class is probably, I've just jumped in. I know the class is probably pretty much finished. I am actually struggling at the very beginning. The 1.3 and the 2.3 section of Python. Can you go over that a little bit with me? Since we have...
Okay.
That's all right.
1 through, oh, you mean the very first
Yes.
part of the class? Okay.
Yes, this is all new to me. So I've actually...
Okay. Okay. So I'll go back and we'll go over those. Nobody else has to stay if they don't want to, okay? But you can if you want. Okay? All right. Everybody else good? And Sean, let me get back there. Okay. So...
I appreciate the help, Lisa. Thank you very much.
No problem. I'm glad it was helpful.
Yes, it was very helpful.
Okay. Send me emails
Sean,
if you have
good
any
luck.
questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. So, is this about where you were having issues, Sean?
Yes, I am. With the string...
Okay.
At the beginning, I was able to type in as far as hello, and I was able to do that. And when I got into further doing this, print a string plus quotation.
Okay.
I guess I'm just at loss. I don't know how to. I've never done it, so this is all new to me. So
that's okay.
And I'm pretty sure you've already seen some of the exercises I've already done, and...
Okay. So really, I think where you're starting to have problems with is about here. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what we have, Python, first of all, do you understand how a variable assignment works?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to go back here, and we're just going to, into a little experiment area, and we're just going to play around for a minute, okay?
Mm.
Python has things called variables. And variables are basically buckets, just a named bucket. And that bucket holds a space in computer memory. And you put values into that bucket. Now, why do we do that? Well, we do that because I may not know what something, what a person's going to put in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I may not know that when Lisa tests the program that she's going to put in the number 10 as opposed to the number 100. So we need something that's kind of, that we're naming, that we can change the information in. So let me explain it this way. I'm going to do bucket. Okay? Bucket is the name of a variable. I know it's the name of a variable because I've just put an equal sign here. All right?
Okay.
And I'm going to say bucket is 100. I'm going to print bucket. And if I run the code, I'm going to get 100 to come out. All right?
Okay.
I didn't print 100. And print is just printing it to the console. All right? I printed bucket. So I can make bucket 1001, and I get 1001 out. Okay? So bucket is just a placeholder. That's all it is. And that placeholder has some value. Now, that value doesn't have to be 101. It can be, hi, Sean. If I run the code, now I get hi, Sean out. Is it becoming a little clearer?
Yes.
Okay. So a variable is a placeholder with a name. That's all it is. And in this case, it's bucket. Okay? Now, I'm going to change something here, and things are going to go haywire because I just changed the lowercase b to an uppercase b. And when I run the code, I'm going to get this lovely little traceback. Okay? And it says, hey, wait a minute, bucket is not defined. And you say, but I called it bucket. Well, that's because it's all case sensitive. Exactly. One of the things that drives people crazy.
Yes.
So that's what a variable is. Okay? So I've done a few things here. I've defined a variable. I've used the assignment operator equals to put the words hi, Sean into that bucket. And then I can use bucket for all kinds of things. I can print bucket plus bucket. And I can get hi, Sean. And I can
But let me ask you this. At the first of line 6 with equal, you put the quotations with hi, Sean. If you were just to put hi, Sean, would that variable be consistent with?
In fact, if I do this, I'm going to get a trace back. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You see this syntax error here?
Yes.
And it's because it doesn't know what hi is. Okay? Not to mention Sean. What tells Python that it's a string is a quote. All right?
All right. So string tells Python hi, Sean versus with the quotes.
Yes. The quotes, anything in between two matching quotes is a string.
Okay.
Okay? Bucket is a variable. You'll notice bucket is not in quotes.
No, it's not.
Okay? If I put bucket in quotes on the first print statement, it's going to print out the word bucket.
Okay.
Because bucket in this instance is a string. If I remove the quotes, Python says, okay, I have a variable named bucket. I'm expecting a variable named bucket. So what do I have to do? I have to go back and look for this variable named bucket and figure out the value inside the variable named bucket.
All right.
That's what Python is doing. It's saying, find me something that I know about that's named bucket. That bucket will have some value in it, and I'm going to use that value that bucket holds to do whatever I need to do. Okay?
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So when you see a line like this, we're just saying I have a variable named bucket, and I'm going to assign a value, in this case it's hi Sean, to the variable named bucket. When I see something on line 7 which says print bucket, Python is going to go back, it's going to look for a variable named bucket, and it's going to print out or use the value inside that variable.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what did you want to go over next? Do you want to talk about numeric expressions, or was it the string stuff that was giving you the more difficult time?
I mean, actually, I even went and purchased a beginning to code with Python book, trying to figure out with the understanding with. Let me get my notes real quick. Sorry, apologize. Using float, what I understand with float is multiplication, and string creates a which we talked about. It's two single or double quotations marking, and backslash, which is in a slash in. I mean, these things
Okay.
have yes. This one thing right here, 2-3. When it goes into the math. Now I'm good at math, but I'm
Okay. So let's
sorry.
break this down. You're fine. You're frustrated, and that's okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's
A little
try
bit.
getting you unfrustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, a free resource is Code Academy. Their Python modules in Code Academy are pretty good. Okay?
Okay. All
So
right.
you can go out and sign up for Code Academy and go through their Python stuff, and it can be very helpful.
All right. I'll do that then.
Okay. So Python has different types of information, and they're basic types. String, which we just saw, that's in either single or double quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Integers. Now, an integer is just a number without a decimal place.
Okay.
Okay? And a float is just a number with a decimal place. Okay? So
All
we
right.
have three basic things. We have a string, we have an integer, and we have a float. String has quotes, integer has no decimal place, and float has a decimal place. It's that basic. Okay?
Okay.
Python, when you are reading information in, so what's a little confusing with Codio is this stuff. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Import sys is something that just says, get me all of the standard Python system stuff. All right? And that gets you things like float and print. Okay?
Okay.
And sys.argv. Okay? What this line here says, what line 3 says, is I have a variable named A, capital A. I am going to assign a float value that comes in from the command line, okay? This sys.argv open square bracket 1 close square bracket is just the first value, if you can imagine it, somebody typing into a program on a command line, okay?
All right.
So when it says we pass in 3 inputs, A, B, and C, that's what this means. It means this is being passed in from Codio, and the value in the variable named A is going to be a float.
Okay, so
The
value
value
of
in
A, B, and C, whatever the numbers that's going to be coexistent in that value. A could be 23, B could be 42, and C could be 3.
that's right.
Okay.
Okay. And then what our challenge was to do this function, A times B plus C divided by 3.
Mm.
That's what it was. That's what it is here. And what we had to do was we had to output the value associated with that. So what we did here on line 8 is we defined a variable named sum, and we assigned the output of this arithmetic expression. So sum is going to hold the value of A times B plus C divided by 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then we're going to print sum. All right?
Okay.
Does that make a little more sense?
Yes.
Okay. So strings. It seems like you may have gotten a little bit, string concatenation can be confusing. And I understand that. So if we look at this code equivalent, okay, we have, and part of this is the fact that how they named the variables, okay? We're talking about strings, and they've named variables A string and new string, and that can be confusing.
Yes.
So we have, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take A string, and I'm just going to make it A. And I'm going to take new string, and I'm just going to make it N. Okay?
Okay.
Okay? And this might make it a little easier to read. Does this already make it easier to read?
Yes.
Okay.
So A equals hello,
That's right.
and then N equals A plus world. And with
That's right.
print, you want to print hello world. Well,
Perfect.
that's what it's supposed to. That's what it's supposed to come out to be. Is that
Exactly. Exactly. So if we look at line 6, now this is a little different, okay? Because 10 is an integer, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I did this, well, let's first of all run it. Let's make sure everything works fine. So if I did this, I can break the code really easy, okay?
There's a freezing temperature warning tonight.
If I do this, and I take away this stir, watch what happens when I try and run the code. I get an error, okay?
Conflict.
Can't convert int object to stir implicitly, because 10 is an integer. Python recognizes it as an integer. And it says, hold on, I have this string. I don't care what's in the string. It's a string. And I'm going to add it to the number 10. Sorry, you can't add a string to an integer.
Because string and integers cannot coexist.
They can't be added together. That's
yes.
right. So in this case, what we use is we use a function called stir. And it says, take 10 in this instance and make it a string.
Okay.
So when I run the code now, I get 12310. I get a string 12310. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then here, I just have two strings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can add them together because they're both strings, because they're both in quotes. Is this starting to make a little more sense?
Now, since you had put them in quotes for line 10, and it came out to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, why was I not able to do that in line 10, then line 6? If you were to just do 1, 2, 3, 1, 0, what makes the difference from that aspect? I mean,
Well,
why
I don't understand the question.
Okay. So in line 6, n equals quotations 1, 2, 3, quotations plus stir 10. And
yes.
Okay. Now dropping down to line 10, you got n equals 1, 2, 3 plus 4, 5, 6.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you, and over into right, run code, it runs it.
Okay, well, let's take a look at that for just a second, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Before I changed line 10 to not have quotes, it printed out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So let's run the code now, and it doesn't print out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It prints out 579. And that's because
it added all of them together. Okay.
Python recognized them as a string, and it added them together.
Oh, okay. And string, what
Can you hold on for just a second?
Sure, no
hold
problem.
on. I'll take her out when I'm done. Yes. I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
So string, basically what it is, it runs everything together. And that's exactly what it is. Go ahead.
Yes, the string is just a literal. What you see is what you get.
Okay. All right, that makes a little bit. Yes, that makes a little bit more sense. Thank you.
Okay. So, do you want to give these a try again and see how you do?
Now, go back to one more. That one right here.
Okay.
Joining the string. Hello.
Okay.
Actually, that's where I was having a problem with understanding that.
Okay.
Since we're providing a string as an input to your program. Your job is to add a string, hello, to the string we provide, and then output it. Make sure you include spaces after the comma. And this is what I was having problems with.
Okay. So what do we do to print something out to the console? What's the name of that function?
A variable. So it'd be print equals...
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. No, a variable would be the...
okay. All right. So we already have a variable. It says we're providing a string as input to your program.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what's going on up here. Name equals sysargv of 1 is when Codio provides input into your program. If you see sysargv of 1, Codio provides input. Okay?
Okay.
So name is a variable called name.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what we're getting in. So now we need to print something out. Okay?
Okay.
So what do I do to print something out to the console?
You have to put print, right?
That's right. Yep, and then I have to always have an open and closing parenthesis.
Okay.
And so now, what do I want to do? Well, according to the program, I want to add the string that they give us to a string with hello in it. So let's start with the hello string. Okay, let's just run it for a second. It's going to be wrong, but we ran it. Okay?
Okay.
So now, let's look back for really quick here. This looks very much like what I'm trying to do in the challenge, doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So, if our variable is named name, what do I do to add it to the string, comma, hello, exclamation point?
Plus.
Okay.
2.
And then what gets plus?
Hello. Oh.
What variable am I using?
Name.
Okay. So it's variable plus the string literal that they told us, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. And that's all you had to do.
Wow.
Does that make a little more sense now?
Hello. Yes.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, the double quotations, it doesn't have to be double. It can actually be one quotation. Am I correct?
Yes. As
Okay.
long as they match.
Yes. As long as they match.
They have to match. That
Okay.
won't work. Okay? Because they don't match.
All right.
That works because they match. And by the way, the conference call usually is supposed to be over at 10.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do apologize.
So we have time for one more because I have to be up early in the morning. Okay?
No, no problem. Thank you so much. Really.
Okay. Are you capable of moving forward right now?
I'm going to practice what you've already taught me, and I'll go from there. If there's any other questions, I'll either email you and go from there, or I'll try to catch up on the next conference call.
Okay. Well, I don't want you to get too far behind.
No, I'm not trying to get too far behind.
Okay.
But this is more of an insight that I've had before, so thank you.
Okay. Did you listen to the first conference call?
I went through the video, and that's what I've been doing.
Okay.
I've been using it as a reference all the way around.
Okay. So don't get stuck. Send me an email. All right?
Yes.
And so even if you're stuck on the next one, and we'll go back through the basics. But what I want you to think about, because what's difficult for people who've never programmed before, is just the concept of a variable. Okay?
Yes.
A variable is just a named bucket. If you start getting confused, go back to where we started, where you and I started on this particular part of the conference call, okay? And remind yourself about the bucket. It may not be named bucket. It may be named name. It may be named A string. It may be named new string. Go back and remind yourself about the bucket, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Let me know.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night. Bye-bye.